Welcome back to another episode. This is Gus, and today we're going to talk about the TH boards. And as you can see here, we have different TH boards. The G30 is the first one. This is the G80, and this is the G400. The TH board, TH stands for through hole. The TH board are made to be very simplistic. So you can really customize the board any way you want. And all it does is exposes the core system, so the module or the chip, to 0.1 inch headers, so it can be easily plugged into a breadboard and prototyped. It utilizes standard 0.1 inch headers. These are very common. The boards do not come with any headers soldered, but you can easily add the headers on top or the bottom depending on which would be easier for you. For example, on these boards, I'll show you on this board, you can have the headers on the bottom and just plug it in. But my personal preference would be to put the headers on this side so I can plug it in upside down. By doing so, I would have the labeling exposed on top. This way, when I have this plugged into a breadboard, I can see exactly what pin I need to get to through wires. Another thing about these boards, they do not include power supply, and that's on purpose. We want this to be as flexible as possible. So you can add your own power supply. It could be a high current power supply that powers everything in the system, or it can be something low, extreme low power. You're putting this in something handheld or something running battery, and you wanted extreme low power, and you have your own special supply. Maybe you're using a battery, you're using an outlet. It's up to you to how to power up the system. All boards take 3.3 volts, and if the system require another voltage, like the G400 needs 1.8 volt, you don't need to add the 1.8 volt, you only need the 3.3. So we add, if you need more than the 3.3 volt, we add that on the system to make it a bit easier. Now we have also added the USB connector, because it's very hard and difficult to work with the wires and USB, and you're probably going to be using the USB cable a lot. It's easier to have it on board, but that's the only reason it's on there. Now there might be some exceptions to some products. For example, this is the OSD TH board. Now this board includes the power supply, and that's because the SIP itself includes the power supply. We didn't add a power supply to the circuit. That's part of the SIP, this package right here, the system in package. This includes a power supply. All we did was wire the USB connector to the SIP, and now you have power going through the system. We don't have to add a power supply here. Now, another thing worth mentioning is the systems that support displays. We have the display signals, and those display signals there are several of them, like 20. And wiring these is very difficult. So what we did was to take all the display signals and add them on the back row, the back header. This header we soldered on, it doesn't come in by default. We added these display signals on the back, and we defined a standard. We call it GXP, General Expansion Port. And on this port, we have all the display signals exposed in a certain way. So now you can design a display and plug it into different boards, or we supply a display adapter, for example, that you can plug in, and you would have display connected. And here's an example. I showed you this earlier. This is the OSD board connected to a display, and we can see it down here. So now I have a 5-inch capacitive display plugged in. Now, there's another option, which is really nice. In this example over here, I found this adapter. This is a male-to-male adapter that I found on Amazon. Just search IDE cable, male, and you would find this adapter. This plugs right in, and then on the other side, I can use a standard IDE cable. This is what we used for hard drives a long time ago. So you can use a standard cable. But will a display run on a cable that is this long, considering this is 25 megahertz? It actually does. When we designed the GXP standard, the pinout is laid out in a way so it works nicely with cables. And we did this by adding grounds between the high frequency signals. Now all signals are somewhat high frequency, but if you miss a pixel on a color, you would never notice it, or almost not notice it. But between clock, horizontal sync, vertical sync, and this was a pointer by, I can't remember whom on the community. I think somebody pointed this out, and we decided to design it this way. So we have ground, clock, ground, horizontal sync, ground, vertical sync, ground. This way you can use a long cable and it still works. So now I can use a 7-inch, 5-inch display, for example. This is over here is the same board on the back. I don't have this taped in, but we usually use two-way tape to tape it down. So this would be how you would connect the 7-inch on the display. Let me power this up. I have a little demo on here, so I'm going to plug it in and show you this running. So here's a display running. It booted up. I did not put anything on the display. It just shows the boot up screen. And then I have a blinking LED. So this is the screen, and this is a blinking LED demo. If you're wondering what this is very common. They are very cheap. You can find them on Amazon, eBay, any website almost that does electronics, handles anything robotics or general electronics. And it is a power supply that provides 3.3 volts and 5 volts. And through these jumpers over here, you can pick between 3.35 and 3.3 and 5 volts. So I chose 3.3 volts over here. I run the wires to the 3.3 volt and ground on this side. I added an LED just for the demo. This shows how this can plug into a breadboard. But then what's nice about this, it also has 5 volts, not just the 3.3 volts. So on this side, I have selected 5 volts, and I added this wire. Why did I need this? These circuits, our TH board circuits, are not designed to need 5 volts. They're 3.3 volts. However, some displays, especially the large ones, they require 5 volts for the backlight. We need more voltage. So what we did was to expose one of the pins to be a 5 volt in. This is completely optional. It's not needed to power up the board itself. But if you're adding a display, you have to check and see if your display needs a 5 volt or not. If you're in doubt, just add a 5 volt line to the 5 volt, let's see what it's called. It's called 5V GXP. That's an input voltage coming from this side, going to the back on the, into the GXP header. Last thing I want to point out is this might be confusing to some users, so I want to point out the difference. So what's the difference between something like this, for example, and this board that I have over here? This is the Fez Cobra 3. This is the Fez stands for freaking easy, or fast and easy, whichever work, depending on where you are. Sometimes you want to tone it down a little bit. So they're both using the G120 system on module. The difference between the two, this is made to be really freaking easy. You plug it in, everything is exposed, labeled, it has the power supply. It's made to be just plug and use and not worry about a thing. Where through TH board, it's made to be extremely flexible, and we are not targeting makers specifically with this. You can use it if you know what you're doing. You can add a power supply. You're good with wiring and soldering. Over here, you can add, on the Fez board, you can add shields, for example. You don't need to know any soldering. You can just add the shield on top. On the other hand, this, you have to know how to solder. It doesn't even come with headers. So you have to start with soldering. If you plug it in, an LED comes on, but that is just a power LED coming from the USB connector. The circuit is not powered on. You have to add 3.3 volts. So if you need extreme flexibility, the TH board will be the right choice. If you need something that is really easy to use, then I recommend going with the Fez Cobra 3 or the other Fez boards. And note how we still have this header on the back. So the Fez Cobra comes with it. This one, it doesn't come with it. Again, you have to solder it. Where on the Fez Cobra, it comes in, it's included, it's already soldered, labeled if you want to wire in circuits, or if you want to add in a cable to add a display, or you can just use the header and plug the display right directly on top, and now you have a 5-inch display or 7-inch display or whatever display. This is really just a display signals exposed on the back. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.